Wife slept with her boss and suggested opening the marriage, then sought to close it when I fell in love with another woman who gives me everything. Hello, everyone. I never thought I would reach this point, to the point of turning to strangers on the internet for guidance. But here we are. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, but we've been married for 8. We met in college and were each other's first and only. I honestly thought we had a unique and beautiful relationship because of that. But it seems I was the only one who thought so. Some time ago, my wife started working at a new company. At first, she found it difficult to adjust because she had always been reserved. However, after my encouragement, she befriended a group of girls, some of whom were single, divorced, or dating, but not married. At first, I was glad she made friends, but then she started going out for drinks, parties, or whatever else her friends had planned. I was worried about her behavior change. I tried to talk to her about it, but at the same time, I didn't want to restrict her in any way. It began to affect our relationship. Intimacy was something my wife didn't usually initiate. But with her constant outings, she was either too tired or not in the mood. At some point, her company hired a new manager whom my wife and her friends had taken a liking to. She began to mention him in passing. But then, one day, she pointed out how I handled certain problems that didn't seem work-related. I asked her about her fascination with this man, but she dismissed my concerns. She even began to ask if I regretted not having more experience with women. I told her no, because she was everything I needed. I swore that for a moment, I saw a flash of sadness in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject. She soon began to mention open marriages as a way to liven up our relationship. It surprised me because my wife had never been this kind of person, so sexually liberal. To be honest, at first I refused. I questioned if this had anything to do with the new manager, which she denied. But she said she felt like she was missing out. Yet at the same time, she didn't want to lose me. So this, according to her, was a safer option. I warned her that she was playing with fire. Reluctantly and naively, I agreed. We established some rules, mainly no sleeping with another person in our home. For a year, my wife went out on dates, had one-night stands, and then, as if I didn't see it coming, she was somehow in a relationship with that manager. On the other hand, I went on a few dates, but not one-night stands because frankly I felt bad. My wife would ask me if I was okay, but her behavior didn't really change. At some point, I felt like the love I once had for her, the pure special innocence of marriage, was gone, and that I was tearing myself apart inside. I eventually ended up dating an incredible woman who immigrated from South Korea. The conversation with her was easy. She had wit as sharp as a whip, quick as lightning, and a smile that made you forget yourself. This, of course, led to more dates until we became intimate. Honestly, I had never experienced sex like I did with this woman. I never knew a woman could be so devoted and make one feel so desirable. At first, my wife thought it was cute, but as the months passed, she began to question my relationship with my lover. I quickly pointed out that this was her idea, and although she was in a relationship with the manager I was worried about, she stayed quiet. It looked like she wanted to say something, but held back. She started coming home early to surprise me with dinner and kept the house extra clean. She also began coming to my workplace to drop off lunch and initiated intimacy in the bedroom. Honestly, if it weren't for her opening up our marriage, which I am also guilty of for having agreed to, I would have been jumping for joy. But instead, I barely gave in to her attempts at intimacy, and when I did, it was simply to end it. Something in me toward my wife had died, and I could see that she felt it too. I asked her what caused this change and why she was suddenly different. The answer I received was that she wanted to show me that she loves me and is happy with me. I never intended to, but I laughed. Then I asked her about her small group of friends, her beloved manager, or her one-night stands. She didn't respond that day and just went to bed crying. The next day, I came home and found her waiting for me. She told me that she wanted to close the marriage, that this whole experience was a horrible mistake, that she regrets everything, and that she wants us to be the focus of our relationship again. I told her to be honest with me and explain what inspired all of this in the first place. And you know what? It was her friends who planted the idea. Because of her numerous sexual explorations. When her manager came along, he surprisingly supported the lifestyle and encouraged my wife to live freely. Apparently, it developed into an emotional affair, but it only became physical once the marriage opened up, as if that made it any better. She described it as being drunk behind the wheel of a speeding car. It was exciting and intoxicating, but the price of that decision had become too much for her. She now sees that she never needed another person, that what we had was truly unique and special. But now she feels like she destroyed our marriage and any possibility of a life together. I told her that I may never be able to see her as my wife again, and this made her burst into tears in front of me. I simply held her silently as she cried until she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. Since then, she has left her job, cut off all contact with her friends and her manager, and even told me that she is willing to spend the rest of her life compensating me and working hard to be seen as a wife again. But I haven't cut off contact with my lover. My lover, frankly, makes me feel like a man, like I can take on the world. And my wife hasn't done that for a while. The truth is, I don't know what to do in this situation. I would love to get that special feeling back if possible, but my lover basically saved me when I was at my lowest. I forgot to add, we have our first marriage therapy session in a couple of hours. I'm not sure how that will go. The message was from my lover. It said, "Good morning, handsome. I slept in your shirt last night because I miss going to bed and waking up in your arms. I miss welcoming the new day with a kiss from you. I think this disturbed my wife quite a bit because she's basically been following me for the past 2 hours. Even when I went for a run, something she never once joined me for during our entire relationship, she suddenly decided to come along. I first met my lover one afternoon, when my wife was out on one of her dates. I was coming from a bookstore, where I often spent most of my afternoons when this whole mess began. My lover was being followed by a short, burly man who was yelling at her. When I saw him grab her arm and violently twist it, I acted instinctively. I practice jujitsu, but I'm nothing spectacular. Still, I was able to restrain him and accidentally dislocated his wrist in the process. It turned out that she had fired him for sexual harassment, and he didn't take it too well. Afterwards, she insisted on buying me a coffee as a thank you, which I agreed to. Regarding her reaction to the open marriage, there was hesitation at first, but she was determined. She never wanted to be a homewrecker. But after learning the true extent of my wife's actions, I basically threw caution to the wind. During our first therapy session, the therapist seemed pleasant, experienced, unbiased, and genuinely eager to help. Even though it was only our first meeting, my wife took the opportunity to lay everything out on the table. She confessed that her groove of friends had made her wonder if she had missed out on life experiences because she got engaged to her first boyfriend and never had the same adventures as some of these so-called amazing women. The therapist pointed out that this kind of mindset can often be detrimental to a marriage, and my wife seemed to agree. She admitted that after the new manager started getting close to her, some of her friends encouraged her to see where it was going, saying this was her chance to explore and discover herself. Obviously, she felt guilty, so she claims, and said she never did anything physical until one of the divorcees suggested an open marriage as a loophole. She was told that some couples come out stronger because of it. Then, after convincing me to agree, her affair with the manager began. She admitted it was intoxicating and blinding, but it lacked the real substance of the relationship we had built over the years. She told me she began to question her reasons for doing this. She said she could see the pain in my eyes, but convinced herself that this was just a fling. She confessed that she would never forgive herself for it. At first, she assumed that because I was dating too, I would eventually accept her situation and be fine with it. But everything changed when my lover became a constant part of my life. I began to smile again for no reason. My eyes lit up when I received a text message, and I happily left the room to answer a call. She said that was when she suddenly felt a knot in her stomach, and she began having panic attacks. For no apparent reason, my wife went back to her friends for advice. They told her it was a normal reaction for me during the affair. But when the same divorcee who had first suggested the open marriage told her that it seemed my lover was making me happy, that's when the reality of it all finally dawned on her. The very real possibility of another woman, not his wife, bringing him joy almost made her faint. She realized how ridiculous this all was and begged for help in getting me back, but was only told that if she couldn't deal with it, then why did she open her marriage in the first place? She knew then and there that these people were toxic and a threat to our marriage and the life we had built. From that moment, she was on a mission to get me back by any means necessary. On the other hand, I didn't share much, but I did let the counselor know about the situation on my side. With my lover still in my life, the counselor said that no resolution could be reached, while my mistress remained involved, and suggested that I book another appointment after tomorrow. The counselor also pointed out that it was unusual for someone to stay with their first love for so long, and said it gave the impression that any storm could be weathered. I strongly suspect she wants us to be one of her success stories. Now let me explain why I still feel drawn to my lover. When I've had a rough day, she doesn't greet me with cold indifference, but with a warm hug and a listening ear. When my insecurities kick in, she encourages me by telling me that nothing is beyond my reach. More than anything, she gives me the space to be the man in the relationship. What I mean is that my lover believes that women were made to do things men can't. She believes that men aren't as loving or compassionate as women, and that, in her opinion, a gentle heart can calm an erupting volcano. She once shared this as a Korean proverb or saying. She believes that she should dominate the bedroom and make it exciting, but never belittle or invade my space in other areas. She believes that men have far fewer needs than women, so once these are met, the man would basically slay the dragon for the woman. At the same time, she does believe in equal pay and mutual respect, but not to the extremes that people seem to go to these days. I understand this may sound controversial, but I think much of it comes from her culture. You'll take a girl who only has eyes for you and leave her because you have some idea in your imagination of who your wife used to be in your history. You'll leave the loving girl for someone who is married to you just to check the marriage box. If you are determined to be like your wife, then keep her. But here's the warning. Your wife only wants you now because you seem like a good catch, since another woman wants to take you away. That won't last. Once you leave the other woman, you'll be back to square one. And when that happens, you may have lost both your wife and the one who truly made you feel alive. A woman who makes a man feel like a man is in high demand. And if you let her go, you may never find that again. Since then, I've moved into an apartment owned by my brother at a ridiculously cheap price. He would have let me stay for free, but I refused. That was just a small glimpse into the situation, because what I discovered about my wife's behavior and the truth behind it was far more disturbing. During our second therapy session, I asked questions that had been weighing on me. I needed to know if anything physical had happened before the marriage was officially opened. My wife looked down at the floor, begged me not to press her, and said that if I knew the truth, it would destroy us. After some pressure, she finally admitted that it wasn't fully physical, but that they had touched each other in ways they shouldn't have. This man convinced her that since it wasn't intercourse, it wasn't technically cheating, and that they were simply enjoying each other's beauty. I was absolutely shocked. She began shaking, hyperventilating, and even crying so hard that mucus came from her nose as she begged me for forgiveness. Even the therapist looked stunned. My wife then knelt, hugged my legs, and said she was sorry over and over again. When I asked her what finally changed her opinion of him, she said it was the moment she overheard him talking to another male colleague. He bragged about how easy it was to get her, calling her proof that you can't trust the quiet ones. When asked if he actually liked her, he said she was just a pleasant distraction and that he had no intention of breaking off his engagement. He admitted the only woman who truly understood him was his fiancée, and that he just wanted to get this out of his system. He even mentioned that he felt bad for me, but shrugged it off by saying, if he sleeps, he loses. My wife said the realization that she was nothing more than a piece of meat to him made her feel physically sick. She left work that day and vomited in the parking lot. Her first thoughts were, what have I done? And my love, please forgive me. She told me that she never stopped loving me, that it was just something different and stupid, and that she now sees how empty it truly was. Through tears, she insisted that she misses the connection we once had, and begged for another chance. But when I got home later that evening, I started packing. As I did, my wife received a video call on her laptop. It was one of her old friends crying hysterically. It turns out that after my wife quit her job, this friend and the manager began an affair of their own. But when she faced a pregnancy scare, he panicked and completely abandoned her. To make matters worse, she had a boyfriend she actually saw a future with, and the only reason she had an affair was because she was curious about the experience. Funny how that seems to be a trend. Her boyfriend eventually found out when he discovered an email between her and the manager discussing the possible pregnancy. The manager, of course, accused her of trying to trap him with a baby. Her boyfriend dumped her immediately, and the reason she reached out to me was because she believed my wife had managed to save our marriage. She was desperately seeking advice. After that, I turned around and left. I've been staying in the apartment ever since. The former friend who had the pregnancy scare was in fact pregnant, but the stress of losing her boyfriend and being humiliated by the affair led to a miscarriage. After that, she went all out against the manager. Out of curiosity, I looked up the manager's fiancée on Facebook. She seemed like the perfect picture of a small-town girl. Pretty, grounded, a teacher of children with special needs, someone who loved family and the simple life. My first thought was, what on earth is he doing messing with other women when he already has someone like that at home? Honestly, why men like him end up with women like her will always be one of life's biggest mysteries. The former friend eventually contacted me. She wanted my side of the story because she was gathering evidence against him, but she insisted on meeting in person. We both got tested for COVID beforehand, and when we finally met, I could immediately see the toll everything had taken on her. The dark circles under her eyes and the redness in her irises showed she hadn't slept properly and was tormented by her own thoughts. She thanked me for agreeing to meet and immediately apologized for her role in my wife's affair. She explained that she and my wife had spoken again, and that's when she found out I had moved away. She didn't want to shift blame anymore. She wanted to take full responsibility, and that's why she asked to meet face to face. I thanked her for her honesty, but asked why she would go to such lengths. She told me that losing both a child and the love of her life had changed her at the core. She could barely look at herself in the mirror without feeling disgust. She could barely sleep because every time she closed her eyes, all she saw was her ex's face. This woman clearly hated herself. And maybe our meeting was in her mind, some form of punishment. She also told me that since relationships between coworkers are a violation of conduct, and even more so because he was in a position of authority, the manager would likely be fired and possibly blacklisted from the field entirely. But the same could happen to her as well. Still, she said she had accepted that. After hearing my side of the story and apologizing again, she left. Later, I went back to the house to pick up a few things at a time. I thought my wife wouldn't be home. Unfortunately, she was there. What surprised me was that she had most of our wedding photos spread out across the coffee table, along with other pictures, and she was sitting there looking at them. When she saw me, I could see she had been crying. She tried to hug me, but I gently pushed her away. She then offered me lunch, but I told her I wasn't hungry and that I wouldn't be staying long. She just needed a few things before she could proceed. Then she said she had something to show me. She pulled out her phone and showed me a message she had received 2 days ago from her former manager. The message came from a new number, since she had already blocked his old one. Apparently, my wife had helped her former friend by making everything known to the relevant parties, and he was furious. He believed that by exposing the secret I was stripping away his power, and at the same time, giving us a fighting chance. I told her I was glad she dared to do that, but that it wouldn't change anything between us. I also told her that I would no longer continue with couples therapy, but that we would do individual therapy instead. This made her pause for a moment, and then she said she understood. I know I should feel joy for the action she has taken or angered because it took her so long, but honestly, I feel numb toward her. That isn't normal, and it's something I want to address in individual therapy, not couples therapy. On top of that, at my brother's recommendation, I consulted a divorce attorney, just to be sure. For now, I am not willing to fight for this marriage, and it seems my wife can sense it. Before I left, she tried to initiate intimacy. When I refused, she screamed at me and asked, "What does your lover do for you that I don't? What does she give you that I don't?" She said it so loudly that I'm certain the neighbors heard her. I shook my head and told her that if, after everything that had happened, she still couldn't figure it out, then it was already clear where our marriage was headed. After that, I left. That's how things stand for me, at least for now.